Hey guys, tonight we step into the shimmering world of gods, heroes, and mortal flaws as we explore the life of Achilles, the Greek warrior whose name echoes through millennia. Imagine standing on the rocky shores of Thea, the sea breeze tangling your hair, salt stinging your eyes, and knowing that a single action or inaction could define your entire existence. You probably won't survive this emotionally unscathed, but that's the point. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments, because trust me, we're traveling centuries in a heartbeat. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And if you are new here, welcome to Sleepless Historian, your bedtime history channel. Tonight's episode is the tale of Achilles and his famous heel. You trudge across the muddy banks where the waters of the Peneus meet the sea. Behind you, the waves lap like whispers of destiny, and ahead, a figure in silver scales, the sea goddess Thetis, waits with a mother's worry and a goddess impatience. You can almost smell the salt in the air mixed with the tang of blood that hasn't yet been spilled. In this quiet moment, Achilles is both a child and something else entirely. Part mortal, part divine. A walking contradiction. Historians still argue whether the myths surrounding his birth were purely allegorical or reflected real heroic cults in early Greece. Some say the story of a mortal mother and divine father was invented to explain why Achilles was so fearsome yet mortal. Either way, you can feel the tension in the story, the push and pull between immortality and humanity. Quirky detail. Some versions of the myth claim Thetis tried to make Achilles invulnerable by anointing him in ambrosia or fire before dipping him in the River Styx. Imagine a toddler screaming in fiery water, awkward parenting at its peak. As you watch baby Achilles curl in Thetis' arms, you notice the heel she holds, a tiny untouched spot. It's the one flaw in an otherwise perfect body. You don't know it yet, but that heel will become legendary, the focal point of stories, tragedies, and later moral lessons. In that single unprotected spot lies the kernel of every adventure, every heartbreak, every heroic shout yet to come. You follow Thetis' anxious glance toward the horizon, where destiny is already impatiently waiting. It's a quiet start, but even now you can sense the storm of fame and fatality coiling around the child like a snake ready to strike. Thetis carries Achilles to the River Styx, its waters glinting with an otherworldly light, like quicksilver under a sun that isn't quite the same as ours. You trudge beside her, toes sinking into wet sand, and hear the river hiss, almost as if it knows the destiny about to be forged in its depths. The air smells like ozone and damp stone, and a chill rises from the riverbank that prickles your skin despite the Mediterranean warmth. Thetis murmurs prayers to the river nymphs, her voice melodic, tense, and impatient all at once. Baby Achilles wriggles in her arms, tiny fists scrunching the air, eyes bright and uncomprehending. You feel a shiver of unease. Here is a mortal infant, and yet he is about to brush against divinity. The waters of Styx lapping around his small body. Historians still argue whether the Styx dipping is metaphorical, an initiation into heroism, or if it's a mythological attempt to explain Achilles' invulnerability and eventual demise. Either way, the scene feels sacred, terrifying, and impossibly intimate. Quirky tidbit. Some myths say Thetis held Achilles by the heel, the one part she couldn't immerse either out of haste, oversight, or a cruel twist of fate. You picture a toddler's toes wiggling helplessly, one heel sticking out of mystical waters, perhaps annoyed by the cold or simply disinterested. It's both ridiculous and ominous. As the water washes over him, you notice a shimmer of light that seems to cling to his skin, a hint that something extraordinary is happening. Thetis whispers instructions, but the river itself seems impatient, bubbling and hissing as though eager to bestow its gift. You imagine time slowing down, the moments stretching as if the universe itself is holding its breath. This is the first brush with destiny, the heel unprotected, the rest of him made invincible. You feel the tension, the paradox. The boy is simultaneously immortal in body, yet vulnerable in spirit in that single, tiny spot. Every hero's journey, it seems, begins with a flaw, a crack in the armor that makes legends relatable and tragedy inevitable. When Thetis finally lifts him from the river, droplets glint on his hair and shoulders like scattered stars. You sense the weight of the future pressing against the present. The heel, tiny and insignificant, will carry the weight of myth for centuries. It is the calm before storms of war, glory, rage, and heartbreak, a single seed in which the entire tale is encoded. You follow young Achilles into the forests of Mount Pelion, where Chiron, the wise centaur, waits. The air here smells of pine sap and wet earth, a stark contrast to the salty riverbanks. Sunlight filters through the trees, casting shifting patterns on the ground like some secret code written by the gods themselves. Chiron's hooves crunch softly against the underbrush as he approaches, carrying both the weight of age and the ease of a being that straddles worlds. Half man, half horse, all wisdom. Achilles flinches at first, confused by the creature who looks part human but gallops like a stallion. You feel a thrill of excitement and fear, the combination that marks the start of every epic adventure. This is the place where he will learn not only swordplay and archery, but also music, medicine, and philosophy, the strange mixture that will make him more than a mere warrior. Historians still argue whether Chiron is a literary invention to explain Greek pedagogy, or if he represents an actual archetype of mentoring in oral tradition. Either way, you sense that no ordinary teacher could have shaped this boy. Quirky tidbit. Some texts say Chiron had a penchant for wine and poetry, and that Achilles would often find him reclining and reciting verses to a captive stag. You picture it, a centaur dramatically gesturing with a goblet, while the boy practices archery nearby, awkwardly imitating him, arrows pinging harmlessly off tree trunks. The training begins at dawn, when mist that still clings to the mossy ground. You watch Achilles trudge through obstacle courses, climb cliffs, and hurl spears, the muscles in his small body straining beyond expectation. Every failure is a lesson, every success a taste of the fame he will one day crave. You can almost hear the whispers of destiny. You will be unrivaled, yet vulnerable. Yet even here, the heel remains a paradox. While the boy grows stronger, faster, and more cunning, that tiny spot left untouched in the Styx dipping is always there, a silent harbinger of mortality. You can almost feel it throb under his skin like a heartbeat of doom, subtle, persistent, and impossibly real. At night by the fire, Chiron tells us tales of heroes long past, of wars and feats, of flaws and glory. Achilles listens, eyes wide, the heel pressing softly against his mother's memory and the water's gift. Here in the shadows, surrounded by forest and legend, you realize that heroism is not just strength. It is also awareness, foresight, and the quiet understanding that perfection is impossible, even for a child dipped in divine waters. The air grows heavy with tension as whispers of prophecy drift through the corridors of Phthia. You trudge alongside Achilles, which are as rumors of oracles and visions twist around the young hero, each word loaded with the weight of inevitability. A seer once told Thetis that her son faces a choice, a long life of obscurity or a short life of immortal fame. The words hang in the air like dust motes in a sunbeam, impossible to ignore. Achilles listens, half in awe, half in terror. You can almost hear his pulse in the quiet, a boy torn between comfort and legacy, between the warmth of his mother's embrace and the chill of battlefield glory. Historians still argue whether these prophecies were part of an oral tradition to shape hero narratives or simply dramatic devices added by later storytellers. Either way, they grip the imagination, and the stakes of Achilles' journey feel monumental, even to someone standing quietly by. Quirky tidbit: some versions of the myth claim that Thetis attempted to persuade Achilles toward a peaceful, inconspicuous life by hiding him among girls and young women, offering him toys and simple pleasures. You imagine a demigod child begrudgingly playing dress-up with dolls, all while destiny glares from the corner like an impatient charioteer. The tension is palpable as he debates quietly in his own mind whether to seek glory or safety. The weight of the prophecy seeps into every action. Each leap over logs, each toss of a spear, each training session with Chiron carries a dual meaning: practice for battle and practice for the moment he will inevitably face his mortality. As the sun dips low, painting the forest gold and crimson, Achilles stumbles across a quiet pool, pausing to study his reflection. You notice the determination etched on his young face, the eyes flickering with curiosity, courage, and a hint of fear. That heel, still small and soft, seems almost to throb with potential, a tiny focal point where fate, divine intervention, and human vulnerability converge. This is the crucible of choice, the shaping of a hero. And you can feel it in every step he takes, every thought that dances behind those bright eyes. The prophecy is no longer just words. It is a pulse, a rhythm that guides the boy as inexorably as the river guides the tides. And somewhere deep down you suspect that whatever he chooses, the story will remember him forever. You watch Achilles as he hides among the daughters of King Lycomedes on the island of Skyros, a place cloaked in sun-dappled gardens and secret corridors. The palace smells of jasmine and polished stone, a strange sanctuary far from the clamoring of war and the weight of prophecy. Here, Achilles is disguised as one of the princesses, draped in silks and tinkling jewelry, a mortal child thrust into a game of illusion. You can almost hear him muttering under his breath, irritated and humiliated, yet strangely aware that destiny has a curious sense of humor. The palace girls chatter and weave, unaware of the secret among them. Achilles practices the delicate art of pretending to be someone he is not, hiding his warrior instincts beneath careful gestures and forced smiles. Historians still argue whether this episode reflects a symbolic initiation or a literal hiding from fate, but either way, the tension is deliciously palpable. You feel the irony. A hero who will one day terrify men on the battlefield is currently worried about how to braid his hair without betraying himself. Quirky detail: some stories say he carried a dagger hidden in his silk robes just in case anyone got too close to discovering his true identity. You imagine him stabbing at invisible enemies while delicately pouring tea for princesses, heroic multitasking at its finest. Then comes the moment of reckoning. The Trojan envoys arrive, searching for the greatest Greek warrior. They scatter weapons across the floor, spears, swords, shields, and Achilles' attention is drawn instantly. You notice a subtle shift in his posture, a tightening of muscles beneath the silk, a spark igniting in his eyes. The disguise crumbles under the pull of innate heroism. Fate, like an impatient tide, will not be resisted. In that instant, you sense the duality of his life: the boy who hides for safety and the man predestined for glory. That heel, untouched yet ever-present, pulses with a quiet warning beneath his foot. The game of disguise ends, the prophecy edges closer, and the story surges forward as inexorably as the river currents he once brushed against as an infant. By nightfall, you can almost hear the whispers of the future. Ships will be readied, banners unfurled, and a war of legend awaits. Achilles may have played a girl for a time, but the world cannot contain the storm he is meant to become. The morning mist clings to the deck of the Greek fleet as Achilles steps aboard, the chill tugging at his newly grown muscles. You trudge alongside him, boots sinking into the sand of Aulis as banners flap and oars dip rhythmically into the water. The air smells of salt, sweat, and determination, the scent of war yet to come. Every ship creaks like an anxious animal, and the horizon ripples with the promise of Troy. You feel it too, a tension that tightens the chest and quickens the pulse, a mixture of excitement and dread that only comes when destiny is about to crash headlong into reality. The Greek kings bustle around, shouting orders and last-minute instructions, each trying to assert authority over the expedition. Achilles, tall, lithe, and impossibly alert, watches them with a mixture of disdain and calculation. Historians still argue whether the gathering at Aulis reflects a real coalition of Mycenaean leaders or is a mythic construct to dramatize the war's start. Either way, the sense of impending chaos is undeniable. Quirky tidbit. Some tales mention Achilles playing a prank on one of the envoys, swapping his spear with a harmless reed. You imagine the envoy thrusting with gusto only to poke air while Achilles snickers behind a column. The tension of war momentarily interrupted by mischief. As the ships begin to unfurl their sails, the wind tugging at the banners and the salty spray misting your face, you notice Achilles' gaze fixed on the horizon. Every movement is purposeful, every breath measured. Even now the heel, the one unprotected sliver of his humanity, presses lightly against his sandal, a subtle reminder that even the mightiest hero carries a shadow of vulnerability. The journey to Troy is not just a passage of distance, but of inevitability. Each wave that breaks against the hull seems to chant a warning. Glory will come, but it will not be without cost. And in the quiet moments between orders, oar strokes, and the creak of timber, you can almost hear the whispered prophecy returning. A short life, eternal fame. By dusk, the ships are well out at sea, the coastline fading like a memory. Achilles leans against the mast, eyes scanning the endless horizon, feeling the weight of expectation settle across his shoulders. The stage is set, the war waits, and you know the boy who once hid in silks is now stepping fully into legend, one heartbeat closer to his destiny. The clash of bronze and the roar of battle greet Achilles as the Greek ships land on Trojan soil. You trudge alongside him, sand crunching underfoot, the acrid smoke of fires and the metallic tang of blood filling your senses. Every shout, every clash of sword against shield feels amplified, vibrating in your chest like a drum of war. Even from the first skirmishes, you realize Achilles is unlike any soldier you've seen. Every movement fluid, every strike precise, a predator dancing among prey. Historians still argue whether the Iliad's accounts exaggerate his ferocity or preserve kernels of oral tradition about Mycenaean warriors. Either way, you can feel it. Achilles is becoming a force of nature, a whirlwind of bronze, sinew, and unrelenting will. His reputation spreads like wildfire. You hear whispers among the soldiers. The son of Thetis is unstoppable. The Trojans fear his shadow, and even the enemy's names are muttered with dread. Quirky tidbit, in some accounts, Achilles' armor shines so brightly it temporarily blinds foes in the sun as if the gods themselves polished it daily. You could almost see him striding forward, gleaming like a divine comet, leaving stunned soldiers in his wake. The day is a blur of battle cries, spear thrusts, and shields smashing against each other. You notice Achilles pausing only to encourage comrades or to retrieve a fallen soldier, blending ferocity with a strange, almost gentle attention. It's as if he is both the storm and the calm center of it. Yet even here, in the chaos, the heel remains a silent note beneath every step. One tiny vulnerability hidden amidst all this power, reminding you that no matter how invincible someone appears, mortality waits patiently. You can almost sense it pulsing beneath the sandal, a quiet drumbeat of inevitable fate. As twilight descends, the battlefield quiets, the dying embers of fires casting long shadows. You see Achilles standing tall among the fallen and victorious, the horizon burning orange behind him. His legend is no longer whispered. He is seen, feared, and admired. The story of a hero and his tiny overlooked vulnerability begins to unfold fully. Like a shadow stretching toward immortality, the morning sun rises over the Greek camp, burning away the night's chill, and you trudge alongside Achilles. As tension ripples through the ranks, the quarrel with Agamemnon begins subtly, a clash of egos at first, words sharper than any sword. The mighty commander claims authority, demanding tribute and respect, while Achilles, proud and unyielding, bristles at every slight, every whisper of disrespect. You feel the heat rising, not just from the sun, but from the collision of two colossal wills. Historians still argue whether this quarrel is a dramatized literary device or a reflection of real tensions among Greek leaders during the Mycenaean campaigns. Either way, it reshapes the battlefield as much as any spear or shield ever could. Even now, the fight is as psychological as it is physical. Quirky tidbit: some sources suggest that in his fury, Achilles refused even the best food, sleeping on the ground and sulking while the camp buzzed around him. You picture a demigod sulking like a petulant teenager because someone didn't respect his space, humanity peeking through godlike might. The argument escalates, each word a spark threatening to ignite the entire Greek force. You can sense men looking on nervously, caught between loyalty and fear. Achilles storms from the hall, his cape trailing, muscles tense, jaw clenched. He refuses to fight, his pride creating a vacuum of power, leaving Greek soldiers exposed on the front lines. You notice the quiet dread among the troops, morale faltering as the greatest warrior withdraws. The heel, small and vulnerable, remains tucked beneath his armor, a secret symbol of his mortality. It is ironic, isn't it? The man whose presence dominates the battlefield can be stopped not by enemy arms, but by wounded pride and fragile ego. You almost chuckle at the cosmic joke, even as the war rages on around him. By dusk, the Greek leaders are scrambling, petitions and pleas flying through the camp. Achilles sits apart, staring into the fire, calculating, simmering, in a storm barely contained. You feel it in your chest, the anticipation of what comes next, when fury and fate will collide in a way only Achilles could embody. The camp falls into uneasy silence as Achilles retreats to his tent, a kingdom of solitude amid the chaos of war. You trudge behind him, though he doesn't notice. He barely notices anything but the gnawing sense of insult and the simmering fire of his pride. The clamor of men, training, arguing, and dying outside becomes a distant hum, like the background noise of a world that has gone on without him. In this quiet, the absence of his fury is itself a weapon, a vacuum that unsettles friends and foes alike. Historians still argue whether Achilles' withdrawal represents a psychological truth of human behavior or is merely a dramatic narrative device to heighten tension. Either way, the impact is undeniable. Without him, the Greek forces falter, the enemy gains confidence, and you can feel the pulse of the battlefield shifting like sand beneath your feet. Quirky tidbit: some accounts claim Achilles spent hours polishing his armor and brushing his hair, almost obsessively, as though divine reflection would keep his wrath sharp. You picture him fussing with his greaves while soldiers die in the distance, a demigod playing with vanity like a cat with a ball of string. In the dim light of his tent, You notice him staring at the heel, subtle, innocent, and yet symbolic. It presses against his sandal, reminding him of mortality even in this cocoon of power and pride. Every sigh, every movement is an interplay of invincibility and vulnerability, strength and insecurity. You sense that even heroes are shaped by small, almost imperceptible weaknesses. Outside, the battle continues without him. You can almost hear the cries of men, the clash of bronze and iron, and it strikes you that Achilles' absence changes the rhythm of war itself. Soldiers fall, strategy wavers, and yet the hero remains untouched, simmering, plotting. In this tension, you realize that power is as much about restraint as action, and sometimes the greatest influence comes from staying still. Night deepens. Shadows stretch across the camp, flickering in the torchlight. You see Achilles leaning back, eyes half closed, wrestling with anger, pride, and a relentless sense of inevitability. The heel pulses quietly beneath the surface, the silent drumbeat of fate that whispers every action has a cost, every delay a consequence. The tent flaps rustle as Patroclus, his closest companion, steps inside, face tight with worry. You trudge alongside him, noticing the small gestures, the way he carries himself with a mix of deference and urgency, the subtle nods to loyalty that speak louder than words. Patroclus sees the simmering storm in Achilles' eyes, knows the weight of pride pressing against that young chest, and whispers a desperate plan. If Achilles won't fight, perhaps his armor can inspire the men in another way. Historians still argue whether Patroclus' act was an authentic military tactic or a narrative device designed to intensify the drama. Either way, you feel the tension coil in the room like a spring. The plan is simple, but loaded with peril. Wear Achilles' armor, rally the troops, face the enemy. You notice Achilles' hesitation, the faint twitch in his jaw, the way the heel, tiny and vulnerable, presses subtly against his sandal, a reminder that invincibility has its limits. Quirky detail. Some myths say Patroclus struggled to walk in Achilles' oversized armor, stumbling like a toddler in a costume, while Achilles watched with a mix of amusement and dread. You imagine him smirking beneath the frown, realizing the comedic and tragic weight of the moment simultaneously. Patroclus dons the armor, and the camp stirs with renewed hope. Soldiers cheer, the sound rolling over the tents and banners, a wave of confidence surging where there had been hesitation. You can feel Achilles' pride and fear intertwining, each heartbeat echoing in his chest as he watches his friend carry the symbol of his own might. The heel remains untouched, hidden beneath the layers of bronze. It is the silent witness to destiny, the one flaw that neither pride, armor, nor bravery can mask. You sense the foreshadowing, the creeping awareness that the tides of fate are shifting. Today, courage wears Achilles' face, but tomorrow the cost may be paid in blood. As the sun dips low, shadows stretch long across the camp. You see Achilles tense, his gaze fixed on Patroclus, the hero in waiting, carrying both glory and risk. In this quiet moment, you understand the cruel balance of heroism. The actions we take to inspire others often expose them and us to the sharpest edges of destiny. The battlefield shudders with the clash of spears and the roar of warriors as Patroclus charges into the fray, wearing Achilles' shining armor. You trudge beside him, feeling the ground tremble beneath your feet, every scream and clash of bronze reverberating like distant thunder. His presence ignites the Greek troops, turning hesitation into a surge of confidence, a wave that crashes against the Trojan lines with unexpected ferocity. For a moment, hope seems tangible, almost alive, shimmering in the dust and heat of the fight. Historians still argue whether Patroclus' death is purely a tragic plot device or a reflection of the mortal risks of heroism in ancient warfare. Either way, the impact is seismic. The greatest warrior remains absent, and yet his borrowed presence shifts the tide of battle, a testament to reputation, symbolism, and the unyielding power of myth. Quirky tidbit. Some accounts claim that Patroclus, emboldened by the armor, struck such a fearsome pose that even horses halted mid-charge, unsure whether to flee or obey. You can almost see the beast frozen, ears flicking nervously, as if sensing the aura of divine favor wrapped around him. Then the inevitable, Hector, Prince of Troy, confronts him. Steel meets steel, and you feel the tension slice through the air like lightning. Every strike, every parry, carries the weight of mortality and the shadow of fate. Patroclus fights valiantly, yet the heel, the unseen, unarmored vulnerability of the borrowed hero becomes the silent reminder of limits, of mortality, of human fragility in the face of war and legend. The fatal moment arrives swiftly. Hector's spear finds its mark. Patroclus collapses, the armor clanging against stone, the dust rising in a mournful plume. You feel a collective shudder ripple through the Greek ranks as hope falters. Achilles' fury, long contained, begins to stir, a storm gathering behind the eyes of a hero both human and divine. As you stand amid the chaos, you notice the whisper of prophecy returning. Subtle yet insistent, glory is imminent, but loss is inevitable. Patroclus' fall is not only a tragedy, it is the catalyst, the spark that will ignite Achilles' wrath and propel the story toward its inexorable, heart-rending climax. Rage consumes Achilles like a wildfire as he learns of Patroclus' death. You trudge beside him, heart hammering, as he tears through the camp, stripping his armor from its stand, muscles coiling like springs ready to explode. Every step seems to shake the ground, every breath sharp and ragged, the very air trembling with anticipation. This is not merely anger, it is grief, pride, and destiny colliding in one unstoppable force. Historians still argue whether Achilles' rage reflects a cultural archetype of heroic honor or a narrative device to heighten the story's emotional stakes. Either way, it is devastatingly effective. The battlefield will soon witness the unleashed fury of a demigod, a storm whose center is both grief-stricken and unstoppable. Quirky tidbit. Some myths suggest Achilles' mother, Thetis, wept tears of molten gold when she saw his grief, a dramatic, shimmering tribute that would have left anyone feeling both awed and slightly jealous. You can almost picture it. Molten streaks glinting across the air, sunlight catching each drop like tiny ephemeral stars. The Greek forces rally at his command, their morale reignited by his fury. You notice the difference immediately. The timid soldiers to straighten, spears held with renewed confidence, eyes brightening, hope rekindled. Achilles moves like a whirlwind, cutting a path toward Hector, the man responsible for Patroclus' death. The clash is inevitable, the tension unbearable. And yet beneath all the rage, the heel remains small and hidden, the quiet reminder that even the fiercest hero is mortal. You can almost feel it throbbing with the rhythm of the battle, a subtle warning that glory carries its price. The duel is inevitable, drawn like a line between life and legend. Hector waits, tense, calculating, and you sense the weight of both mortality and myth pressing down on him. The storm of Achilles' fury is about to collide with the measured, skilled courage of Troy's greatest warrior, and you can feel the world holding its breath, suspended on the edge of a spear. By twilight, the horizon glows with the fire of battle, shadows stretching long and flickering across the battlefield. You see Achilles, unstoppable yet aware, the pulse of vengeance pounding beneath every motion. The story has reached its crescendo, And you can almost hear the whispers of fate circling above, reminding everyone that even heroes must reckon with mortality. The clash between Achilles and Hector is like two forces of nature colliding, lightning against hurricane, flame against stone. You trudge beside the edge of the battlefield, feeling the heat of bronze and the weight of destiny pressing down like a tangible thing. Every strike sparks, every parry reverberates through the air, and the dust swirls around them, coating the ground like fine powder from a shattered world. Historians still argue whether this duel reflects historical combat practices or serves purely as mythic symbolism for heroism and mortality. Either way, the intensity is undeniable. Two men, one driven by vengeance, the other by duty, embodying the eternal dance of fate and free will. Quirky tidbit. Some sources describe Achilles taunting Hector with exaggerated, almost theatrical gestures, like a performer savoring the drama. You imagine him gesturing wildly, shouting insults, all while moving with deadly precision, a demigod with a flair for showmanship. The duel is brutal and swift, the ground torn up under their feet, blood mingling with dust and sweat. You notice the precision in Achilles' strikes, honed from years of Chiron's training, every movement a testament to practice, instinct, and divine favor. Hector, formidable and clever, parries and counters, but the storm of Achilles' wrath is relentless. And then comes the fatal strike. You feel the tension snap like a drawn bow as Achilles drives Hector to the ground. The heel, small and overlooked, seems to pulse in memory, the unseen vulnerability of the mighty, the reminder that mortality is always lurking. You sense the weight of inevitability. Glory has its cost, and even the greatest warrior can be undone or undone others by unseen threads. As Achilles stands over Hector's fallen form, he does not rejoice. There is a gravity, a sorrow, a recognition that fate is not merely won, but endured. You can almost hear the whispers of the gods in the wind, murmuring that even the immortal adjacent are bound by mortality, that every heroic act carries a shadow. The battlefield quiets for a heartbeat, the screams and clamor of war receding as if giving space to the enormity of what has transpired. Achilles, triumphant yet burdened, rises, the pulse of rage and grief still coursing through him, aware that the heel, small and insignificant, remains his silent tether to humanity, mortality, and the inexorable march of fate. The aftermath of Hector's death hangs over the battlefield like a heavy fog, thick and suffocating. You trudge through the chaos of soldiers, looting, grieving, and strategizing, sensing that something fundamental has shifted. Achilles, towering and unyielding, drapes his arms over the fallen Trojan, his breath ragged, his armor smeared with blood and dust. Every motion is weighted with grief, vengeance, and the stark awareness that death has been made personal. Historians still argue whether the depiction of Achilles' mourning serves as a reflection of ancient Greek ritualized grief or a literary device emphasizing heroism's emotional depth. Either way, the emotional resonance is undeniable. The battlefield is now a stage for both physical and psychological power. You can almost hear the heartbeats of men around him synchronizing with his fury and sorrow, an unspoken acknowledgement of his unparalleled presence. Quirky tidbit. Some myths claim Achilles dragged Hector's body behind his chariot for days, an exaggerated image that has spawned endless artistic renditions. You picture the absurdity and horror combined, the hero utterly unstoppable yet participating in a ritual both macabre and deeply human. The heel remains, a hidden reminder beneath his sandal, pulsing with subtle mortality, even as Achilles seems unstoppable. You feel the paradox, his every action screams invincibility, yet a tiny flaw marks him as human, tethered to fate in ways no armor or skill can defy. As night descends, the camp settles around him. The wind carries the scent of charred wood, spilled wine, and distant smoke, and you notice Achilles' gaze flicking toward the stars, perhaps seeking counsel from the gods or solace from the unending horizon. The weight of prophecy presses down, blending glory and grief into a single, undeniable force. You realize that even triumph carries echoes of cost, and that legends are built not only on victories, but on the fragile human threads that tether them to mortality. The battlefield may quiet, but the story hums beneath every whisper of wind, every glint of bronze, every pulse of that small, unseen heel. You sense that Achilles' journey is far from over, that the echoes of this moment will ripple across time, shaping both heroism and human understanding for centuries to come. The story arcs toward its final crescendo as Achilles faces the gods' subtle interventions and the inevitability of his own mortality. You trudge alongside him, feeling the battlefield stretch endlessly, the horizon smeared with twilight's crimson and gold. Every step he takes seems both deliberate and fated, each motion echoing with the weight of legacy, pride, and the ever-present shadow of the heel, the tiny overlooked vulnerability that whispers mortality even in the midst of overwhelming power. Historians still argue whether the myth of Achilles reflects an idealized heroic archetype or a moral parable about human limitations. Either way, the lessons resonate. Even the mightiest are tethered to fate. Even the fastest to glory are bound by vulnerability. You notice the dichotomy. A man whose every motion is perfection and precision, yet defined by a single small point of fragility. It is this tension that shapes not just his story, but the stories of generations that follow. Quirky tidbit. Some legends say that the gods themselves debated whether to intervene directly or simply let the natural course of destiny play out. You imagine Zeus and Athena peering down, one sipping ambrosia, while the other rolls her eyes, their celestial version of a cosmic office meeting influencing events on Earth. As Achilles moves toward the final stages of his tale, each encounter, each duel, each whispered insult or plea carries the heavy weight of consequence. The heel remains a subtle, ever-present reminder, a heartbeat beneath the armor, a tiny flaw around which the entire narrative pivots. You can feel the tension like a coiled spring. Glory is within reach, yet peril lurks in the smallest details. The battlefield is quieting now, soldiers exhausted, fires smoldering, the sky stretching dark and endless above. Achilles pauses, glancing at the horizon, the shadow of the heel hidden, yet impossibly significant. You sense the enormity of legacy, of reputation, and of the quiet, relentless march of fate. The story hums beneath every heartbeat, a reminder that greatness is inseparable from vulnerability, and that even heroes are bound by the quiet, inexorable truths of mortality.